Hi guys, welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Tonight's session, it was supposed to be imaging challenges continued and some PI acronyms. And we haven't had much activity on the imaging challenges, and we got a lot of great info last week, so we might pretty much concentrate on the PI acronyms, and I may go in after the fact and change the name of this show or whatever, just so it's more specific. But before I get into that, we've had him on before, and we've seen this image before. But Brian Odom is our Image of the Week winner with his Messier marathon image. I was going to say no single target. Brian managed to get the entire list. And Brian, I know you're in the room. Would you mind speaking for a little bit about this great image? I know we've heard a lot about it before, but in case people haven't heard it.
Well, when I wrote this up for my club newsletter, the title was "We Stayed Up All Night." So this was an all-nighter, and I'm getting a little older, so I don't get to do this very often, or really am able to do it. So, but we stayed up all night. So the story starts when the prison 3 miles south of my house decides to put in improved lighting. Well, that just pretty much killed my southern sky, which was the only good sky I had. So then I decided, well, maybe the visual isn't getting so much fun, so I switched over to doing astrophotography, and then I bought a Canon camera, and then the madness set in, and as we know, it can suck you down like quicksand. But it's been an exciting ride. It's kind of like a roller coaster. It's got higher highs and lower lows than I find with just visual observing, which I enjoy anyhow. So once the Prison Glow Observatory got shut down, decided to shift the telescope to remote control out in New Mexico. So the scope is in the New Mexico desert now, and it's in a large observatory with two huge plane waves. My scope is pretty modest. It's only a 10-inch reflector. It was a Dob at one time in its life, and so it's on a Paramount, and it's just a 10-inch f5 reflector. And the camera I use is something I like to keep things simple, so don't use any filters. So it's just a Canon 5D Mark III, which is modified by Hutek, and so it's quite simple, and I have a simple setup, and it's been pretty reliable. So about 2 weeks before our visual Messier marathon was going to happen here in Michigan, I thought, you know, we could try to go for everything with the scope. And so I started doing some homework, and I downloaded, you know, there's a lot of lists you can get for the Messier marathon visuals, so I downloaded one that came from the Saguaro Phoenix Club, and it told me what to go for. And then there was a nice article in Sky and Telescope, I believe from April of 14. I think it's Tom McConaughey's great article about how he did it. And what I did was not as impressive as what he did, because he did it by himself. I had a team. So I practiced the night before, and as anybody who has done the Messier marathon before, they know that the beginning and the end are the hard ones. And boy, it was tough. And the toughest one, well, yeah, definitely I'll tell you about the end when we get to it. But so we had a team, and we had jobs, and there were two guys who sat at my computer and were telescope operators. So they just went from object to object and imaged each object. Each object, as you can see on the screen here, I mean, you can see that we got a variety of different colors and quality levels. Each picture is a single image. That's it. So the star clusters are probably about a minute to 2 to 3, and the showpieces like Orion Nebula and the Lagoon are more like 5 or 6 minutes. And we only had 5.5 minutes we could spend on any object throughout the night. So we really had to scoot and go right through. And so I had two telescope operators, and I was the Photoshop guy. So when they would take a picture, then I would get the image, and I would set to do my Photoshop work on it, and then plug it into this poster, as you can see right here. and I had help till about 2 o'clock in the morning. But then after that point, it was just me and the 2 telescope operators for the rest of the night. So it was a long night. I got carpal tunnel from my photoshopping on my mouse. I had to put on the carpal tunnel wrist guard, but it was tons of fun. The most exciting part was at the very end when we realized that the final object, which is I believe M30. I think M30 is a very low in the sky as the sun's coming up. The sun's starting to come up. It's starting to get bright, but there's a mountain back there, and then realize, hey, wait a minute, the wall of the observatory is in the way. So it took image, and finally I got one crappy image where half of the scope is obscured by the southern wall of the observatory, and that ended the night. So we got all 110, and the poster was finished later that day. So had a ton of fun, and the club has been very excited about it, and we've been able to print these things up at the local university and sell them to club members at cost at club meetings, and people are very excited about seeing it and hearing the story, because they know a lot of the people, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, who took part, and that was the team. So stayed up all night, and it was really a fantastic, magical evening.
Thanks, Brian. And for those of you out there, first, Brian will be in the room for a little bit. If you have any questions about this, feel free to ask them. But if you really want to get some great details about this, Brian did a session with us just a few weeks back. Search for Messier Marathon on YouTube, and you'll actually get it. And you'll get to see a lot of details about it, especially if you're planning on doing it. There's certain things you have to know. But definitely a great image. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to click out of it here. All right, so we're going to move right on. And last week we went over all the imaging challenges, and I think one of the last things we did was I think someone just posted a picture of it online, but was my solar image. And I just want to show this off. I'm going to have to go full screen. It's not going to let me pull up Registax otherwise. But I'm going to show this off. I'm going to bring it up full screen, which I believe is going to make it easier for you guys to see. But this was where and if you can't see it, just let me know. This is where I was introduced to wavelets. Now, I don't know if you can see these changes. Right now, you're looking at the raw image as it came out of the stack. If I remember correctly, it might have been 40 frames stacked. I was jumping around on these. I don't know whether this was for an animation, in which case it would have been 40 frames stacked. If it wasn't for an animation, then it would have been probably 200 frames stacked. But when you get done with Registax, or in some cases, some of us use AutoStacker to do it. And I'm just telling you this stuff so you know what goes into solar processing. You end up almost always bringing it into this wavelet area. And I suspect that people who have Pics Inside and who've been processing solar images in Pics Inside can do this in Pics Inside. But the first time I saw this, I was kind of amazed. The amount of sharpening and noise reduction you can get just from this little console right here really goes far for you. And yes, I'm just remembering this was for an animation that I had done. A little quirk with Registax, so it's going to look really bad right now, but I'm going to go back to here. And you can see it sharpened it up considerably. Basically what I did was I changed the sliders here. I just moved up the noise, excuse me, the levels of the either sharpening in the layer, and you're basically just changing the, I don't know, you're using the sliders to change the sharpening, and in some cases you need to use some noise reduction because it's kind of getting an odd look. But this is basically how I was introduced to wavelets, and I thought, wow, what a really powerful tool. Why aren't we using this on deep sky stuff? And yeah, it turned out we were, which is Pics Insight, and that's when I was kind of amazed by Pics Insight. Downloaded the trial. I think I said this last week too. Downloaded the trial. Was confused as all heck. Didn't use it for months and months and months until I got my CCD camera and kind of committed myself to PI. there I go again, PI. So we discuss Pics Inside all the time, and for some reason Pics Inside has its own jargon, and it's not just a jargon. Pics Inside, and I'm going to jump over to the program right now. Pics Inside, and stop me if you can't see it, is basically a toolbox. And because each tool is kind of made one at a time and incrementally, and they're always building on specific tools, and they have certain priorities, and then they move on to other tools. The tools have kind of random names. It's not the most, it's not the ideal way. It's not like you have tool number 1, tool number 2, tool number 3. So you basically have to know a bit about the tools before you get into them. And we're always talking about which tools we're using. Oh, I did an STF on this, and then I did this on this. And I had a guy email me a couple times, and he said, the acronyms, you're killing me. You should just explain what the acronyms are instead of saying STF or whatever it may be. And I agree. But at the same time with PI, sometimes I know the acronyms, and I don't necessarily know what the non-acronym term is. And I have a list that I wanted to go through before I shouldn't say before. I have a list that I want to go through just to give you guys an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about these acronyms. And if you are a new person coming into PI, then these are going to be very valuable for you to know which tools do what. That was my biggest problem. I could read how to use each tool. I could learn how to use each tool, but I didn't necessarily know which tools did what. So I'm going to go right down the list that I've prepared and give you some ideas. So this is the screen transfer function, and even if I were going alphabetically in order, I would still come up with the screen transfer function first, because this is the primary tool in Pics Inside that makes sense of everything. And I am just going to show you exactly what it is. You guys have seen this data before. This is the challenge data from last week. And the screen transfer function, the STF, is the tool that we use to apply a temporary stretch on the image so we know what we're dealing with. If you come from Photoshop, you have to stretch the image first before you process it. In Pics Inside, you don't have to stretch the image first. You put that temporary stretch on it, and it just changes the way it looks, but it hasn't actually done anything to the data. If you're not happy with what the screen transfer function does to it, you can modify it just by playing around with these sliders, the same when it's in RGB mode, but you're not doing anything to the actual data. You're just changing the way it looks on the screen. It is still linear data, and when I reset the screen transfer function, I haven't lost anything. I've just gone right back to what the data actually looks like. And that gets into the PI philosophy, which is basically that you want to work on your data as much as you can in linear mode, because you're basically preserving the integrity of it. And it's one of those places where if we had scientific data, it would be clear why we were doing it. And basically, the reason that I kind of have succumbed to that philosophy is that I've seen the results that come out of it, and I just think that they're great. You can do good work in Photoshop, but everything I've done in Pics Inside, every tool I've used has made it that much better. So basically, you know what the screen transfer function is. And I think that I've explained a little bit about how you've got linear data, data that looks like that. It's an unstretched image. This is a temporary stretch on it. Now, another tool that I can't really demonstrate what I'm talking about well without is the histogram transformation, and this would be HT as an acronym, but basically, after you do your linear processing on this, you still have that dark image right there. So the screen transfer function being just a temporary stretch, gives you an idea of where you want to be, but it might not be perfect. But in some cases, it might be satisfactory for whatever reason you have. In fact, for masks, I do this all the time. Sometimes for my images, I do this. But the screen transfer function allows you to transfer that temporary stretch right to the image in a permanent sense. But you have to use the histogram transformation tool. You drag the triangle, which is the way PI works. You're dragging triangles into what you want to apply it to. You drag it down to here, and it puts that stretch into the histogram transformation function. If you're a newbie coming into PI, you're going to make one particular mistake all the time. Now, what did I do? I dragged the triangle to the histogram transformation to apply it to here, and I want to apply this histogram transformation to this image. And I still do this sometimes. Well, I still do this all the time because I know it doesn't really matter. But when I apply this to this image, it's going to be in a permanent sense. I apply it directly to the image, and I get a white screen. Why do I get that white screen? Because this temporary stretch is still applied to the image. I need to reset this tool, and there you go. So right now I have a non-linear image. This has been stretched. There are certain tools in PI that work with linear images. There are certain tools that work better with non-linear images. Now that we're beyond what's a linear image, what's not a linear image, I think we can go into some of the tools. But first, because I want to show you some tools that do apply to linear images, I am going to get rid of those. Actually, I'm probably going to bring that screen transfer function back because I need that to work on linear images. And I'm going to undo that histogram transformation function. Over here, this is your Process Explorer. I've gone through this stuff before, but this is where all of your tools are in alphabetical order. Screen transfer function, and perhaps the alphabetical order is the reason we're all about the acronyms, because all you really have to know is the first letter of the words. But so I'm going to put that temporary stretch on there and go into my second acronym, which is going to be, oops, that's not my second acronym. And these get confusing. And if you're using the entire words, for example, MLT is my second acronym, or possibly third if you count histogram transformation. But MLT is Multiscale Linear Transform. This is the newest, I might not be correct about the newest, but this is the newest noise reduction tool that has come out, and it's not purely for noise reduction, but it's a tool that applies everything to your data in a linear, when your data is still linear. And it's primarily used for noise reduction. And this is one of the things that I'm actually unclear on, and I told him I might hit him up for a question. David Alt, are you still in the room?
Yeah, I'm here.
David, noise reduction with the multiscale linear transform, while it's still linear, I've always thought noise reduction you want to wait somewhat for a long time to apply it. Why would you want to do noise reduction early on in the process?
Well, I do the noise reduction early on in my images because you have a better chance of modeling what the data actually should have been while the data is still linear. So once you've stretched it, you may have done a histogram transform, you may have done a curves transform. It's really hard to determine the relationship between two pixels at any point anymore. So while the data is linear, you actually have that linear response of how many photons actually were collected in each pixel. So you can do a better job of approximating what the value should actually have been if you had no noise coming in. You had nothing but signal arriving. So that's why I do it. There's different camps in there. There's some processes that actually do a better job of noise reduction when the image is nonlinear, and so people will do it afterwards. But I like the linear approach better.
That's a very, very convincing answer. That's a good point. That while the data is still linear, I guess anything that's brighter is going to fit right to that signal to noise ratio curve, and it's just going to be better able to adapt to it. Yeah, that's wow. When it's told to you that way, it's pretty convincing. And I hope that didn't confuse anyone or turn anyone off. Pics Insight makes you think about these things, and if you don't want to think about it in these ways, then maybe Photoshop is a better tool for you. But I'll tell you, if you're committing yourself to it, you're going to get more out of it. Now, I've heard.
Adam, I'll add one other thing. The multiscale tools are not just for noise reduction. In fact, you can use them to do the same wavelet sharpening that you're doing in Registax.
Yes, yeah. I was just going to demonstrate kind of a little bit of that. And would you, David, because, and I'm going to be honest to everyone out there, I rarely use multiscale linear transform, and it's a new tool, so I don't know much about it. Do you do much sharpening early on in the process, just as you would noise reduction, David?
Yeah, I do pretty much all the sharpening and enhancing right off the bat. So any kind of noise reduction, sharpening, all that's done pre-stretch.
Okay. How about your HDR, MT, or LHE? Would that be nonlinear?
That's nonlinear. So HDR actually requires the image to be nonlinear to function properly, right? So you need the really high signal areas to not have much differentiation between them for it to work.
Okay. And do you when you said do you use those tools, or do you not consider them sharpening?
I do use those tools. I don't really consider them sharpening. I consider them a contrast enhancement.
Okay, good point.
Right. So it's a dynamic range compression is what the HDR is, and local histogram equalization, that is a contrast enhancement.
All right. Good point. And I'll be honest, I get more out of this channel than a lot of you, I think, because I'm always willing to ask questions when I don't know. I'm always willing to be corrected when I make mistakes, and it's almost self-serving because of how much I get out of this channel. So basically, the multiscale linear transform tool, if you've ever used any of the wavelet-based tools from Pics Insight, these are your individual layers. You can actually increase the number of layers to however many you want if you're trying to isolate specific structures within. And as David said, you can sharpen or do noise reduction. And here you see detail layer. So for example, layer 4, and this is, I believe you have to be very, very gentle with this. This may be too much, but let's see here. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to preview it. And in most cases, I would end up previewing it with a preview box, I believe. Oh, that wasn't as dramatic as I had expected. There you go. So you're going to see, and that's on the wavelet layer 3. This is just a demonstration. Like I said, I don't know how to use this tool too well. But you see I have ringing artifacts, but it is applying some sharpening. And this is way too much, but I might as well stay away from that. But what I have done with this is use noise reduction as just to test it out. You don't want to do that. Why is the tool not super set? Don't know. But for your noise reduction, if you want to do a wavelet layer at a time, you use this checkbox right here. The K sigma noise thresholding basically allows you to do it globally on all of the layers. There's de-ringing support. You noticed earlier when I did that, when I bumped that up, you saw ringing artifacts around the stars. It's not previewing for me right now, not sure why. Oh, different layer, that's why. Different layers, of course, applied on different size structures. But basically, that's it. That's the multiscale linear transform. I had some self-fulfilling or self-serving reasons for asking David about that because I want to learn a little bit more about it. I don't expect the others will take that long to go over.
Hey, Adam, I'll interject one other thing here while we're talking about this. In case you're not aware, but the layers that Adam's talking about is essentially a structure size. So, you know, you can see the layer number here to the left, and then the scale to that. So that says at layer 1, it's going to sharpen or noise reduce, you know, structures that are basically 1 pixel in size. And as you go up the layer scale, you're affecting larger and larger structures. So if you, did something, and yeah, Adam's running the layer extraction script here, so you can kind of see. You have to apply an SDF to all those.
Yeah.
But the layer extraction script will show you essentially what structures exist on each of those layers, so you can enhance or enhance them or noise reduce them however you want to, on specific structure sizes.
So yeah, so if I hadn't explained it earlier, so here I extracted, I believe, did I extract 5 layers and then it gives me 1 residual layer?
Right.
I believe so. So if I were to have 5 there, then whichever of these particular extracted layers that I'd want to sharpen, I can, or noise reduce for that matter, I can apply specifically. And when you zoom in on these, you can actually see whether there is graininess of noise, or whether there isn't noise in it. Residual, no noise, but no noise in these layers. Probably down here you're going to see a little bit more grainy noise, and you can apply it specifically. Like I said, this isn't my strong suit, so this isn't something that I do all the time, and I'd love to have someone else come on and really go into these tools, but that gives you a good basic understanding of how the layers apply. Going down my list. Okay. All right. First on my list in alphabetical order is ACDNR. And ACDNR, if I'm correct, and David, you're going to have to interject one more time, linear or nonlinear, correct?
Yes, linear or nonlinear.
Yes, so ACDNR allows you to work on linear or nonlinear data and both lightness or chrominance separately. And the thing that I like about ACDNR that kind of makes sense to me is it allows you to make a preview of, it allows you to create a lightness mask to apply and make a preview of it in real time. And I've always liked the way it did it. I'm just thinking about this. I believe the data, sorry guys, I'm hearing some background noise. Hearing some background noise, sorry about that. I don't know if you guys know where that's coming from. So I'm trying to think, is this data, I believe this data is still linear. And with ACDNR, you can create a mask basically just to simply to apply the noise reduction too. And I'm sorry, I didn't even say what ACDNR. ACDNR, the acronym, is Adaptive Contrast Driven Noise Reduction. So it is basically just another choice of noise reduction algorithms. It is not the newest, and I know that a lot of people prefer a different one, which I'll go into in a little bit. I actually prefer many times this other one, but when I started off, I thought ACDNR made a lot more sense. So basically, and it's you've always got to go in here. Did I get that right? No, I didn't get that right. But basically, you're creating a mask to apply the noise reduction to, and I'm not going to go into too much depth here. And you're picking whether you want to apply it to luminance or chrominance. I don't even know what it would do if I applied it to chrominance on a monochromatic image. You can choose whether to apply your lightness mask, which is what you just created down there. And then this is a real-time preview of it. I have the real-time preview activated. Standard deviation really tells you the size of the noise reduction. Or I shouldn't say the size as much as, in a sense, the size of it, but let's see what they describe it as. standard deviation of the low pass filter of the lightness. And then your amount is right here, and you can reduce the amount. But that's basically ACDNR. I am going to go to another tool, and I'm going to jump over to another spot. DBE, and this is possibly the most valuable tool in Pics Inside. DBE is gradient removal, yet they call it dynamic background extraction. So that's the other thing in PI. You want to remove a gradient. They don't call it the gradient removal tool. They call it dynamic background extraction. Now you know. And DBE, we've seen it work. In fact, if you go to last week, you'll see it apply. But DBE basically models the back of the sky. I can probably show you what it does real quick if you're not familiar with it. I'm just going to take a few sample points. Normally, you want to get sample points that don't have stars in them, don't have nebula in them. I'm picking them fast here because I just want to show you quickly what it does. And I apply that, and what it's showing me here is the modeled background. When I apply the STF to it, oh, I'm sorry, I actually applied that. I thought I was on none. But either way, I've modeled the background, and you can see, look at that. That looks like the background of my image. So when I go in and subtract that with the proper setting, then I will be able to pretty much remove a gradient. There's basically two steps in this, and that's getting a good model of the background. And then I find that by getting a good visual model of the background, and then by moving the tolerance up, I think it actually sometimes helps to better apply it. If the model that I've created doesn't get rid of all the gradient, then I push the tolerance up, and that seems to do it. Another tool that I rarely use, yet I see people using it and commenting it on all the time, is automatic background extraction. And I don't know if it just doesn't work with my images or if I'm lucky with DBE, but this allows you to do the same exact thing with as DBE, and I'm just going to apply it with default settings right to my image to get that same background model, and we'll see here, did a pretty good job on it. You are not seeing any structure. In an image like this, you probably wouldn't see structure. The place where DBE is very valuable is going to be with a nebula-heavy image. An image like this of Eric's, and I think I made a mess of this already. I think I applied something to this. It just doesn't look right to me. But an image like this of Eric's, where we were trying to preserve the IFN, and this is debatable. I know we've discussed it a few times since then, because we're saying that there's the IFN over here in this region probably is real and probably is brighter, but in some cases you want to do almost what a dynamic range compression would do, is expose it a little bit more. So you might end up having to make it darker to make everything a little bit more visible, or at least parts of the background over here darker to make the other parts visible. And that's where DBE really shines, because you can put just a few points on a few spots and get just a gentle gradient going across, and when you apply it, it really does do to the image what you'd, in many cases, what you'd hope for. It's not something you can really achieve with the Carboni gradient removal tools, or at least it's not something I've been able to achieve with Carboni's tools. If there is a way, I'd love to know. I think the best way is probably to make a mask in Photoshop and invert it, and or make a mask in Photoshop and get rid of the stars, like do a dust and scratches filter to just kind of gently show the gradient, but very, very difficult if it's nebula heavy.
Hey Adam, Sean had some questions here on DBE that we can probably answer.
Yes, go ahead.
So that everyone can hear. So he was asking, when you were doing your other image, he saw some of the sample points turned red down in the lower right. And essentially what DB is telling you is that those samples are not going to be counted as part of the background modeling. And that's because that the tolerance is low enough that all the pixels are above, too far above the median for it to count them. So you have to increase the tolerance so those pixels are counted. Sometimes it means they can be above or too far below. The tolerance increases both above and below, and the shadow relaxation increases just below, right? So if you drop your tolerance back down to like 0.5 again, you'll see a bunch of those boxes turn red.
Yep.
Yeah, or it won't place them when you generate them, right? So if you place one down in the lower right corner, it'll be red.
Yeah, that's one thing. That's one actually thing that I like doing is using the tolerance to, if I'm using sample generation and I'm not placing them manually, I like using the tolerance to tell me the point is. If I slowly push it up, let's see, if I put it at 3, I'm probably good at 3. But that way it kind of tells me where it has to be, I think.
Yeah, there are some issues with that. Like you have a sample that's on, a couple samples that are actually on the halo of your galaxies here.
Oh, then I would go back through and I would delete anything that's touching a galaxy. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So you need to make sure that they're, because there are some cases like this where your gradient's pretty extreme, and you need to manually go through. If you push up your tolerance high enough to get samples across the whole image, it may be so high that it can put it on stars and whatever else as well.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it depends on the image. At my focal length, well, with H alpha, I'm rarely going to generate samples. With galaxies, I'll do it probably more frequently. Did that answer Sean's question, or did you have any other questions, Sean? I know he's one of our new PIs.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks.
No problem. Sorry, I have my list on my computer, but it's easier to pull it up on my phone. I am going to go ahead and apply this. And we're going to see. This doesn't take too long. Did I subtract it? Yes, I did. You can choose not to have it give you... Oh, that was ugly. That didn't work how I was hoping for. Oh, I didn't crop this image, and in a lot of time... Okay, I see exactly what happened. I did not crop this image in advance, and a lot of the samples fell along that stacking artifact on the edges and probably just messed up the whole thing. So, and I closed DBE too. I'm too fast with these things. Do you guys also, when you're working on an image, occasionally just close it really quickly? Think, I'm never going to need that, then close and then realize, oh my God, that's the image that I needed.
Yeah, I do that all the time, Adam, but there is a way to recover it. With the history, you can actually go back and bring that thing up again.
You can recover them with history, really?
Yeah, you can bring the process you ran back up again using the history on any image.
Can I bring up the image that I just closed, though? Or would I have to take the old image and then run the process on it?
Well, you'd have to take the old image and run the process again.
All right, still better than losing it all, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I did that too frequently. Too many images on the screen.
Yeah, if you close an image, the history for that image is lost entirely, right?
Yeah. All right, so let's see what happens here. I'm going to do that. Oops. I think this is going to work. That will be good enough for me. What was that?
I noticed you guys never used that normalize on the image correction. Is there a reason?
I don't know. since I'm doing it early in the process, I am assuming that color calibration and background neutralization will take care of that. I may be wrong about that.
Well, the normalize is just going to make sure that nothing is clipped, right? So you could have a DBE that's aggressive enough that it might potentially clip data, although it does seem to adjust, the low end clipping. I'm not sure if it adjusts the high end clipping. So sometimes when you do your DBE, you'd think, well, the black point should go much further than it did, but it makes sure that it didn't clip anything. I'm not entirely sure what they do there, though, if the normalize is not on.
So do you suggest leaving it on, or do you suggest leaving it off?
I don't typically run with it on.
Okay.
I haven't noticed any issues, and like I said, generally when you're doing DBE, it's going to drop the value, and I think they do some sort of autocorrect to keep it from going below 0.
Gotcha. Okay. Moving on to the next confusing acronym, SCNR. And then I'm not going in alphabetical order now because I've been jumping around. And SCNR is a chromatic noise reduction, and it allows you to remove noise channel at a time. And many times the kind of bane of a lot of images are green scattered noise throughout, and this does a really good job of it. Many times you're going to bring the amount down, you're going to apply it to an image. You might do it with a screen mask if you, you might do it with a mask if you are trying to apply it to a particular spot. But I kind of, when I need to use it, I need to use it, and I can kind of see it. And I'm going to apply it probably a little bit higher than that. Let me apply it at 50% just so you can see what happens, because this is probably a good example of an image to run it on. And you can see it, and I actually still have the screen transfer function on, but you could see what it did to the image without changing the screen transfer function. When I put the screen transfer function back, it's going to put that back on. And actually, I'm trying to think about this. I would normally run this, I believe, after I've color calibrated the image. I'm not actually going to go into that stuff right now because it's not an acronym, and I think those are kind of basics. They're pretty easy to do. But SCNR, you've heard us use the term. That's kind of what it does. I showed you histogram transformation function. One other thing I wanted to show you, two other things I wanted to show you, and those are the two things I mentioned earlier. Actually more than two, but let me see. And Pics Inside, again, it's like a toolbox, but the tools aren't in numerical order. I think this still has the same STF stretch applied to it, but I'm not going to take that chance. Again, I'm just going to apply that histogram transformation function to it. And I'm going to do these without masks, but normally you would do these with masks to get the best results out of them. But sometimes you can do it without a mask to see what it's going to do, and then create the mask so that you know exactly where you want to apply it to. But HDR multiscale transform. This is one of the ways we really get a lot of detail out of what appear to be overexposed parts of a galaxy or a nebula. And as David mentioned earlier, and I called it sharpening, but it's not sharpening. It is kind of a dynamic range compression. So it's a way to visualize what is basically too much dynamic range for our screen to display in a more appealing way. I have a lot of luck running this with the default settings, the default number of layers. I think in many cases you might want to apply it only to the lightness component when you're doing it on a color image. I don't think it matters here, but so I'm going to leave that out. You frequently are going to have to use a deringing on it. I want to say that very frequently my setting is 0.020. Might not be the case, but let's give that a try. I'm just going to show you exactly what it does. This tool does take a little while. I hope my audio doesn't cut out. But and there you go. Wow, without a mask, that's a pretty good result. Let me click back so you can see. This is the before, and this is the after. This is the before, and this is the after. So you can see it really brought a lot more detail into the center there. This does allow you to change the number of iterations. So if you want it stronger, you can increase that. I know that's one technique to get it to act a little bit stronger. Don't see any ringing artifacts around the stars. I don't know if I would have seen them if I had applied it without. We will see. Yes, around. That's interesting because I see them now around the large stars, and I would not have expected that.
It's probably because of the scale you're running at. You're using a six
layers.
So it's going to hit the bigger stars where you'll see the ringing.
Gotcha. Yeah. Good point. Let's see what happens when we drop it down without deringing, and we'll see what kind of results we get both inside. Yeah, so you can see it does it on a much tighter and smaller scale. I like the way it looks at that 6, but then you're going to have to use that deringing. But that is HDRMT for the acronym, and you know what? I'm going to leave that applied as I work my way through the image, because the last one, which I've only recently, actually I shouldn't even say that, I'm not as familiar with as some of the others, is LHE, or local histogram equalization. And this is the same thing. This is a dynamic range compression, but this has a preview on it. This you will be applying with the mask, and you will be most likely using an extremely low amount of it. And it's just basically another way to get a little bit more of that dynamic range compression out of it. You're going to see major artifacts with this as it is, but it's just another, like I said, another tool. I think David went over this well last week, and I defer to him because he knows this stuff a lot better than I do. I kind of change settings and say better, worse, better, worse, better, worse, and work my way through it. But that's basically LHE. And I'm going to look at my list one more time, but I think I've worked my way through most of those tools. And yeah, I think I've got them. I hope I didn't confuse you guys. I hope I didn't bore you guys. I'm going to come back to this screen right here for the first time. Oh, good. Albert Razzo is saying he thinks if you apply DBE without creating a new image, you can recover the DBE process from the history. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that because, yeah, I'm going to have to look into that. I'm either going to have to look into recovering my processes from history, or I'm going to have to put a bunch of sticky notes on my monitor that says, don't close the window, think twice. But,
yeah, as long as the image is still up, you can recover any process you applied to it from the history.
Oh, yes, yes.
So even one that you've created new, the first step in creating the image will be a process container, and inside that process container should be the DBE process. So you can extract the process container step and then pull out the DBE process from that process container.
And help me out, David. Where is that? Because that's one thing I rarely do.
It's one of the Explorer windows. It should.
Let's see here. Oh, you're not seeing my window.
Yeah.
I forgot I jumped back. Okay, so is it File Explorer? No.
There should be a History Explorer.
History Explorer. Yeah, it's just in there. Oh, no view selected. That's why. Okay.
Yeah, you have to have an image. So under History Explorer, there should be a pull down at the bottom for selecting a particular image to see the history of.
There you go. Yeah. If I didn't do much to this, I did the histogram transformation. But yeah, that's all in there. And now, is it this easy? I can drag the process. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then you can double click it, bring it up, or reapply it however you want.
Yeah, that's cool. I've always wanted. I always knew. I knew there was an easy way to do that, and I've never figured that out. Still gets me because I was working on, and I'll pull it up now. Normally, I shouldn't say I'm gonna hide my images till I demonstrate them because I always want to show off my stuff. This is the mosaic I'm working on right now, and when I'm working, I look at all these windows. It like drives me nuts. I've got to somehow keep them sorted, and think, yeah, there is my registration H alpha frame, and this just has the STF applied to it. But yeah, you have to go through RGB frame at a time and register them to this. I've shown some mosaics off in the past if you're interested in doing this, and it's fairly a simple process when it works. In fact, gradient merge mosaic is like a dream when it works, and when it doesn't work, sometimes it'll drive you nuts. And it's not gradient merge mosaic's fault. I think it's my fault because I'm looking for that. This is the frame I want. I think that I'm having the problem with, or I think it's actually my blue and my green frame, but there's a bit more of a gradient. There's a bit. It's a bit lighter on the left side than it is on the right side, and for that reason, I've tried DBEing it out. I've tried DBEing it out on the individual frames. I've tried combining them and DBEing it out, and every time I do it, I get this odd look. Let's see if I have the example of that.
Would a linear fit between those two help that at all before you gradient merged them, before you mosaic merged?
It does help, Sean. So having your data with the same intensity range before you do the gradient merge mosaic definitely helps.
Yeah, I do think I am. Do I specifically have to run a linear fit on it, or will frame adaptation do that?
You have framed adaptation on, and so it should be fine. That essentially does the same thing.
Yeah, and when you do star alignment to make the mosaic, if you don't use frame adaptation, it's pretty clear. It looks as you would expect it. It just doesn't look right. One frame is too bright, one frame is too dark. So
it's already built into the process, right?
Yeah, you do have to check it.
The way Adam's running it here, he's doing the alignment to each other panel and doing the frame adaptation so that the panels match intensity once they've been registered. So you're doing it as part of the registration process.
Yeah, because trying to think, would a linear fit? Okay. Would I want to do a linear fit from the RGB data to the H alpha data? Or would
once you have your mosaic constructed, probably so, to balance things out. But
after the fact, yeah. Right. No benefit to doing it in advance, probably, because
only between only between the panels and the mosaic should it matter.
Yeah, but this is what I'm still working on, and I think it's a matter of getting that leftmost stuff out. I've been going through all of my frames, and I've been restacking them. I think some clouds went through on frames 10 and 11, so I've been restacking them without that frames. And I've been taking fewer frames in and restacking them, and I'm still kind of stuck. But I'm gonna still plug away at it and give it a try. But
And there's a lot of nebulosity in that center area. I mean, I wouldn't assume that that's a gradient.
Well, you know what? I'm trying to pull that up really quickly because I saw one. What am I doing here? I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to talk while channel combination, and I'm doing color calibration. Channel combination. Make it easy on me. No, okay. I must have closed one of those images. I'm going to do a quick channel combination on it, just to show you. Just to show you what I'm talking about. Because that is, yeah, that very well may be the case, that I'm trying to account for, oh, these aren't my new ones, are they? No. These are the originals. See, I don't know if you just saw that, or if you noticed that. It's clear to me, but the gradient on the right-hand sides of the frame, this is my red frame. Now I know it's an H-alpha heavy target, so that's where it gets a little bit confusing. But I just don't see the same brightness over here. And when I do the channel combination, this is going to be difficult, keeping these straight.
Adam, I just shared a screen of a really wide field because I was trying to find where our narrow field images lay. This whole area is just one big cloud of gas, hydrogen gas.
I've been looking at lots of pictures, and let's see, did I get it? Okay. This is basically what I'm looking at. I'm going to click back over so I can see, oops, what you shared. Oop. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, yeah, I know it's a really heavy region. This is actually the gradient is in my B and G channels, my blue and green channels. So I'm thinking that maybe it isn't H-alpha, but it could potentially be something else. And I looked at some RGB images of it, or some H-alpha RGB images of it, and there is some other stuff up there. So it's possible that it's some sort of dust, but it's not the most pleasing looking thing, and it's really messing up my merging of my mosaics. And when I do go in there and manage to get the gradient out of there, it just doesn't, I don't have enough stuff there. So that is, Eric, your point is correct. That's definitely the case, but that's what's making this one really difficult. And what spots do I have of background up there? Right there, right there, right there. I don't even think I could use any spots over here because I think a lot of it is nebula. I've tried pulling in spots from around here, but this has been my struggle. And I did a I don't know if it stopped at 6-panel mosaic last year, and I started taking RGB for it, and never could get the RGB working. I stopped at my 3rd RGB panel, but that's my struggle. I don't know what stimulated me to jump back over into that. Maybe just to keep the conversation going. But it's just, I'm sorry, I was showing the YouTube people the wrong screen. But I think you've seen a lot of PI acronyms, and hopefully you learned a little bit about PI. I learned a little bit about PI, and we're all going to continue, I'm sure, learning about PI. And it's one of those things that you can't know everything. Well, maybe David knows everything about it, but
I don't think so.
The normal people. I'm still amazed. Sometimes I feel bad asking all these questions, David, but thank you for always enlightening us.
Sure, not a problem.
But I do want to say that's pretty much all I've got. We don't have a topic yet for next week. I'm going to quickly scan through all of the just all the things on the side. I want to make sure all the questions have gone unanswered. I don't think I once asked for questions, but hopefully you guys know you're always welcome to ask them. Sean saying a little off. A little off topic, but those little windows. Sean's windows were cut off, but I think he got it figured out. No, he didn't. We'll see. Sorry, I'm just reading through. Yeah, so I think that's basically it for today. But I do want to thank you all for coming. We don't have a topic for next week. We're going to try and come up with one. Well, we're going to come up with one. You'll see it posted sometime this week. And I don't know. See you guys next week. Hope you have some clear skies. Have a good night.